assembly of our plunger arm. I've assembled the components for this. Again, I have a 10cm glazing ball. As mentioned in episode 3, these can be obtained from garden suppliers, and I've had a 40mm hole put in it. On the Dalek plans, the outer pipe is 38mm. In Australia, it's extremely difficult to obtain 38mm aluminium piping, so a lot of local builders have gone with 40mm. 2mm difference we feel is a reasonable tolerance over the trade-off of cost of importing aluminium piping from overseas, which is extremely expensive. So we've had the 40mm hole put in the dome. Thanks again, Michael. And I've got a piece of 40mm aluminium tubing. I've cut it to length based on the plans to allow 39.5cm to extend outside the dome as per the plans. The ball, and then enough inside for a hand grip. So the first job is simply to put the dome on. I've made this really tight. So that once I get it in place, it'll hold. Grab a tape measure, double check my measurements. And there we go, 39.5. All the scratching on the tube will clean off when I polish the tube, which I will do shortly. The other components we've got, some 25mm aluminium piping, some 32mm aluminium piping which form the inner two arms. I have my plunger. In my case I'm cheating, I've bought a pre-bought rubber moulded plunger that's been cast in rubber resin, urethane resin. Saves a lot of time and effort, and a really good job's been done. It'll fit nicely in the end of the smallest pipe. And then my friend Michael also has created some top hat bushes for me, which will be used in the end of the pipes to step them down from one side to the next. So that'll go in there. I won't put it in firmly at this stage. And then, as you see, the next pipe down fits nice and neatly and leaves a very nice clean finish. So now we've polished up the plunger arm just using fine grade emery paper and steel wool to get most of the scratch marks out of it. I will go back to it with a little bit of mental polish and a buffer at the end of the process, but for now that's good. So now I'm going to do the same as we did with the gun arm and give a very light bend into the ball just to see it so it's ready to receive the primer. And we'll give it a coat of the grey primer. Plunger out of the way because I don't want paint on that. So like the gun arm, just putting a light coat of grey primer onto the ball to start with. Keeping it really light so that it doesn't run too much. Any runs you do get, you can lightly sand before you put the black coat on. Really good. This dries in about 15 to 20 minutes. So just for a minute or two I keep turning it so that it doesn't dribble. And then we'll come back later and put the black coat on. So as you can see, I've now put a coat of the gloss black on the ball. It takes quite a long time to dry this because it's an epoxy enamel. So I need to leave that to dry. So we're going to go on and look at the rest of the plunger arm. Okay, so looking at the rest of the plunger, I've got a piece of 25mm aluminium tubing. As you can see, I've polished the end that's going to be out of the Dalek. This piece down this end I haven't worried about too much because that's going to be inside the other tubing. And there's a mark on there to show me where I want it to come out to. Same with the piece of 32mm. I've also got a piece of flexible hose. We'll be using that as an extension on the small tube. The reason you use a piece of flexible hose rather than a longer small piece is so that inside the Dalek it can bend easily out of the way. There's no risk of injury. If you're trundling at an event and you've pushed out your plunger and someone shoves it back in, there's not a piece of pipe coming back into the pilot. You've just got a piece of soft hose. I've got just a hose adapter that I picked up at the hardware shop, which I'll be using to join the hose to the tube. And then I've got the two top hat bushes, which are designed to step the pipes down. And then I've got two simple rings that will also step this pipes down. So the first thing I'm going to do is put the ring in place. Got a 2-part epoxy glue, Loctite brand in this case. This one's quite simple, you just use the plunger and it mixes itself as it comes down. Put the ring on. Excess glue, which will then come from this end. And move the ring into place where we want it on the glue. Leave that to dry, it won't take long to dry. Glue on this one as well. And slide it down into place over the glue. Twirl it around a couple of times to get the glue to grab, and then leave it to dry. Also, while I'm at it, I'll glue this piece into the end of the pipe. So just some epoxy glue. And that goes in this end of the 25mm pipe. Make sure we get plenty of glue everywhere. Make sure I just get a bit around the lip there as well. Put that in place. Leave it all to dry. So the next step now, everything's dry, is to assemble. So first of all, I take the flexible hose and place that onto the end of the pipe there as an extension. Next, this piece of piping goes through and into the front here we fit the bevel. And to enable us to do that, first of all, take that out and just place it. Gentle tap on the open. Until you get it nice and snugly in the end there. So now the ball's painted, nice glossy black finish on it. So the next step is to actually assemble everything. So I'll start off with the small tube. I'll put a piece of flexible piping on the end of it. It just pushes on. It's a nice snug fit, which means it's not going to pull off in the Dalek. This then goes through the inside. And through the bush. And then need to put this one through whole thing and put this bush around it. Now I'm going to put a little bit of glue on this bush because it's quite a loose fit, and once it's in place we want it to stay in place. So this is just 2-part epoxy that I've mixed up. Put some around the inner edge of the bush. Good coverage. Careful not to get glue on anything else. Slides over. And slots in. Give it a bit of a twist. And push it into place. To get a little bit of epoxy comes out. Wipe that off so it doesn't affect anything else. Epoxy can be cleaned off with acetone later if you get a few marks. Then the last thing we've got to do is to fit the plunger to the end of the yarn. This is a snug fit deliberately, so that I don't even need to bolt it in or glue it in or anything. It'll just push in. And there we have one little Dalek arm. Pull the hose, pulls it closed, push it out. Extends. You see I just pushed it a bit hard there before the epoxy set, so we need to wait till the epoxy sets properly. So that completes episode 4 of the Dalek Diaries. Thanks very much for watching.